The wind is howling out there, and it's a perfect day to make an ooey gooey mac and cheese. But you're probably wondering, why do I have this squash here if I'm making mac and cheese? Well, this is a roasted squash mac and cheese. And before I lose you, don't click away yet. Even if you don't like squash, or you think you don't like it, there's something about putting mashed roasted squash in mac and cheese that just elevates everything, sneaks a little bit of nutrition in there, but I promise you, you will not be able to tell it's in there if you don't like it. If you do like it, so much the better. Let's get started. So the first thing we have to do is take a nice squash. It doesn't matter what kind, just a nice fall autumn squash like a butternut or buttercup or acorn. This is an acorn squash. So we're going to cut into this. Don't let your squash boss you around. There. And just separate it in two and find yourself a nice sharp-edged spoon and scoop out all those seeds and flesh. Once you have the seeds all scooped out of your squash, cut each half into quarters. So now you have your squash cut into quarters, and just find a little baking dish. Pile them all in there. Sprinkle with a little salt and pepper. A drizzle of olive oil. And now you want to slide this into a 350-degree oven and roast them just until they're fork tender. You can even do this step in the microwave. I find if you roast them in a traditional oven, it sort of brings out the sweetness a little more, takes away a lot of that excess moisture. Microwaving, perfectly fine method of cooking these, but keep in mind it will be a little wetter, and you lose some of that nice caramelized, roasty flavor that you get in a traditional oven. Whatever works for you. I'm going to use the traditional oven. You don't have to even preheat your oven. Just put your squash in, turn the oven on, set your timer for 20 to 25 minutes. Start checking it at that point. Once it's tender when poked with a fork or the tip of a sharp knife, it's ready to come out. So let's get this baking. While your squash is roasting in the oven, you can get some of your other ingredients ready. I have gone ahead and grated my cheddar cheese for the mac and cheese, and I have a mixture here of old cheddar and aged cheddar. And the old cheddar is just the regular old orange colored cheddar that you get at the grocery store, and I had some of this aged white cheddar that's made here locally. So I thought a mixture of that would be nice. I wouldn't use a mild cheddar in this. I don't really think it's strong enough in flavor to carry the dish. You really want that zip that comes from a nice, sharp, aged cheddar. So what I have here is about 3 cups of cheddar, and that measures out to about 300 grams of cheddar in total. And then I also have a few tablespoons of freshly grated Parmesan cheese. And that's going to add just another level of cheesy flavor in the background. Not a lot, but it's got some strength to it, and it tastes really nice. And so we're going to set this aside. And before I do that though, I'm going to just take a little bit of this cheddar and reserve that for the crumb topping. So I'll just take about half a cup. And so we'll set all this aside. And I also have a large pot of water that I'm just about ready to turn on and get that boiling to cook the pasta. And for the pasta, I'm using sort of medium to large shells. You could use penne, you could use rigatoni, you could use a large macaroni. You could use just regular elbow macaroni, but I think it's nicer to have something with a little cup to hold all that nice cheesy sauce. But really, whatever you have in the cupboard is fine. This is about 2 cups of dried pasta, and it's a fairly good quality pasta. It has some nice ridges, and that weighs about 185 grams. And I'll put all the measurements in the description below, but as soon as the squash has finished baking in the oven, we'll get this going, and then everything's going to come together fairly quickly. So the timer's gone on my roasted squash. It's nice and bubbly and caramelized. I'm just going to stick a knife here and there, and oh yes, it's nice and tender. And see what I mean about the nice caramelized edges that you get when you roast squash in the oven. Like I said, you can do this in the microwave to speed things up, but you won't get those nice caramelized edges that bring out the sweetness in the finished dish, but it will be fine either way, whatever you choose. I will just set this aside now to cool, and I will get the pasta going in our big pot of water. So while that squash was roasting, I was boiling a pot of water to have that ready, and it is boiling. So I'm going to put a generous pinch of salt. Watch your fingers. Sometimes adding salt to boiling liquids will make it get a little lively. And then I have my pasta shells. So just get that cooking. Give things a stir. Cook this according to the package and subtract about 2 minutes. So the cooking instructions on this particular type of shell pasta say to cook it for 9 minutes. I'm going to set a timer for 7. This is going to continue to cook in the cheese sauce that we'll be making, so undercook it a little bit. It's going to soak up all that cheesy goodness, and you don't want soggy pasta. So while our pasta is cooking, we can scoop out this squash flesh from the shells. So I'm just using a nice big spoon. You may want to let this cool off a little bit. I have cook's hands, so I'm handling these before they completely cool off. They're a little warm still, but you just want to scoop the cooked flesh away from those shells, the peelings, I should say. This recipe calls for 2 cups of roasted squash that's been mashed. So I'm going to scoop out what I think by eye is about 2 cups, and then I'll measure it. So just keep working away at cleaning your roasted squash until your pasta is done. And just check on the pasta. Yeah, I think that's done. Before I drain it, I just want to dip out a little bit of the pasta water. So I just have a little teacup here. It's okay if you get a little bit of the pasta with the water. And just put the cover on your pasta to keep it warm while you continue working on the squash. Ideally, your squash would be a little cooler when you're doing this step, and then it'll come away from the peelings a little easier. There, I think that's about 2 cups of roasted squash. And now I'm going to just take a meat masher. You could use a regular potato masher, but I find this works well for all sorts of things. And I'm just going to give this a rough mash. You could use a food processor for this, but I kind of like the texture of squash. If you're really trying to hide the presence of squash in this mac and cheese, I would run it through the food processor. And once you have that mashed into just a nice consistency, I'm going to take half a cup of light cream. I'm just going to mash that through just to make a nice squash sauce. Just give it a nice mix. Okay, so that's ready. So we have our cooked pasta in this pot, keeping warm, and this is our roasted squash that we've mashed up with the cream. So I'm just going to slide all that into the pasta. Pardon the awkwardness here, I am not a lefty, but I'm trying to do this so you can see it. And now we'll fold all this in. So next I'm going to turn my heat back up to low, just very low, because we're going to start folding in the cheese. Tip all of this grated cheese in here. And I should have mentioned the reason I grated this onto the parchment paper is for precisely this reason. So you can just pick it up and tip it right into your cooking pot. And that seems like a lot of cheese, and it is. We like cheese. And I also have that small amount of grated Parmesan, and that's about 1/4 cup, 50 milliliters, or a few tablespoons, but measure with your heart. I like Parm. And then very gently fold that all in. It's going to seem a little dry at first, but we're going to loosen this up with just a little more milk. And that was about 1/4 cup of milk that I just put in. I'm going to go in with a nice amount of freshly cracked black pepper. I have a little pinch of nutmeg, maybe 2 pinches, and just fold that in. Okay, that cheese has melted into the pasta and the squash, and it's very saucy. I had reserved some pasta cooking water just in case this needed to be loosened up a little bit, and I've decided I won't put that in, and I won't put in the entire amount of milk that I call for in this recipe. I'm just going to use half of it. Sometimes your squash is a little drier and this dish can use the whole 1/2 cup of milk, but in this case I just used 1/4 cup, so use your own best judgment. Now I'm going to go in here and just taste this for seasoning. Very hot. Molten cheese. I don't think it needs any more salt because of the saltiness of the cheese, but it could use a little bit more black pepper, so I will add that. Just fold that in. Now I'm going to cut the heat. The next step is I'm going to make some buttered cheesy crumbs. So we'll just let this hang out in the pot and I'll get that done. So I'm just going to quickly mix together the crumb topping for the macaroni and cheese, and I have 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs. They can be any kind of breadcrumb, fresh breadcrumbs. I have panko here because that's all I had. This is the reserved cheddar that we grated earlier and set aside. It's about 1/2 cup of cheddar. I'm just going to mix that through the crumbs. And I have 2 tablespoons of melted butter. That's about 30 milliliters of melted butter. So you just want to fold that through the breadcrumbs so the butter coats the crumbs and moistens them. I also have a handful of fresh parsley leaves that I've just picked off the stem and run them under the tap to make sure they're nice and clean, and dried them off in a paper towel. Add some nice color and some freshness. And I'm just going to run my knife through this in one direction. And then I'm going to run it through in the other direction. It doesn't have to be really finely chopped. You're not looking to pulverize this. You just want a nice rough chop. I'm going to put some of this in my crumbs, and I'm going to save half of it for garnishing the finished dish. So I'm just going to toss that into the crumbs. So I have my oven preheated to 350 Fahrenheit. The pasta's been here keeping warm, and I have a greased casserole dish. So I'm going to transfer this, if I can, this is a very heavy pot, into this baking dish. Make sure you get all that cheesy goodness It smells so good. The combination of the roasted squash and the sharp cheddar is divine. This is perfect fall supper fare. So spread this out in your pan, and then you want to sprinkle over all these nice buttery, cheesy crumbs. So now we slide this into the oven, bake it for about 20-25 minutes until it's all nice and bubbly and those crumbs have gotten nice and golden, and some nice little crispy edges around the edges. Those are the best part, aren't they? So I'll be back to show you what this looks like in a few minutes. Cheesy goodness. That smells fantastic. It's all bubbly and nice. You can really smell all the cheddar and the Parmesan and the roasted squash. And let's get into this. Yeah, the shells have soaked up all that nice cheese sauce. And the cheesy crumbs are nice and golden on the top. That looks so good, doesn't it? I wish you could taste it. I wish you could smell it. You can taste it and smell it if you make it yourself. Try to get a little bit of all the cheese and crumbs. That's kind of a big bite, isn't it? Oh well. That is so good. You would never know there's any squash in here. Just a little hint of roasted squash. It gives it a nice sweet taste. It is very cheesy, very creamy. The cheesy crumbs on the top are really top notch. And this is a perfect, easy fall dinner. If you roasted your squash ahead of time and had that waiting in the fridge or even frozen, you could put this together lickety-split. So toss a little green salad, and you've got a nice, warm, cozy autumn supper. Everyone will want seconds of this. I don't think there's going to be any leftovers. One more bite. So good. I should mention that if you really wanted to take this over the top, a little bit of crispy fried pancetta or bacon and some frizzled sage leaves crumbled over the top, that would be a lovely option to just dress this up a little bit. But really, it doesn't need anything except you, me, and a fork. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. I enjoyed making it for you. Thanks so much for following along and visiting my kitchen. I hope I'll see you here again next week. I've got all sorts of yummy things planned. Christmas is coming, the holidays are coming, and I think it's time we got into the festive spirit. So hope to see you soon, and bye for now.